Alrighty. Welcome everyone to my 2,000 subscriber special. This is our live stream we're going through today. Again, I'm Cleric with Armored Core, doing Armored Core content. Looking forward to putting some more out, especially when Armored Core 6 comes out. And I have a special guest with me today because I asked a bunch of questions and people kept answering and saying, we want Armored Core lore. So with that being the case, I figured I'd open it up and I'd bring the person whose videos I've enjoyed for quite some time now, does major deep dives on Armored Core information. There's things he knew that I had no idea about ever. He goes through the books, the files. It's awesome to get him as my guest. And with us, we have Armored Core lore. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm Armored Core Lore, and my channel focuses on the history of Armored Core series.
Yep. All right. So we have some questions. I had a couple of people put some in, so we're going to address those in advance. But if you do have any questions that are lore related, feel free to put them in the chat. I'll do my best to get to them. The intention is to be around about an hour. If we end up being shorter, no big deal. It goes a little long, it's fine. I just have to jet out of this conversation to the airport and hope it all goes well. So without that, anything else, I think, getting in the way at this point, I had asked Lore here to, I want to keep calling you Armored Core Lore. Should I call you Mr. Lore? Lore? Like, how should this go?
ACL is absolutely fine. Honestly, I'm not worthy of any titles.
We'll see if we can change that in the future. So we have ACL here. So I asked you to get like maybe 3 or 4, maybe kind of niche, I mean, Armored Core niche in and of itself, but some lore information that maybe not as many people, maybe even fans potentially, would be not necessarily privy to, but it's really cool, you think, and be worth sharing.
Well, to start us off, I think the best place to start is the Fiona White Glint sort of thing, because White Glint's, say, events was very much hidden. However, in the book Armored Core Lore, Armored Core: A New Order for Next, we have a page 47 and 48 which talks about what happens to them. So I'll just read a little extract from that, just so we get the idea that we've come to learn that actually Linearch, as much as it was independent, was still relying on companies. So I'll just read a little extract from it here. So we'll start with, this is the interviewer talking to Fiona. He says, "You are right, I'm sorry, let's get back to the questions. Linearch advocates for free cities. However, they currently work with many companies. Isn't corruption of higher level leaders a risk?" To which Fiona answers, "Because the population has grown, we can't self-sustaining anymore. As such, we need to reach out to other corporations to acquire enough food for Linearch." So this was quite an interesting one, because as we know in the game, there's not really much talk about it. It's very much Linearch on its own, and it doesn't really connect with anyone. We know White Glint obviously goes out on missions to the corporations, but we've never looked into how they get their food. And so I think this answers it quite nicely as one of the more interesting points. Another interesting point, which I like very much, is on page 43 of the Armored Core official data book, which talks about how the Mirakuma HQ, to make people's lives a little bit easier and to make sure their time setting, was they actually projected day and night cycles on the ceilings of the underground cities. So it was a natural thing as it went round and round. Of course, the final few points is from the Armored Core. Oh, which book is this one from? That's it. That's me fired for a terrible thing.
It's fine. Don't worry about it.
There's so many books, and you've just got a lot to. There you go. It's the Armored Core 2 Navigation Guide, which talks about on page 78 about some of the mechs that was designed by Zeomatrix and Emerald. And at the time, there are some. Let's see, on page 72, we've got a middleweight Zeomatrix legs, which a lot of the headpieces were prototypes on that page, but they were never seen. And it goes on, and it's quite a few pages. We go on to find more head parts that were prototypes but never released. And there's also on page 83 an Emerald one which had impact cannons on it. However, these impact cannons never made it into the game, and they literally are stuck in this book. So I thought they were quite interesting facts to share.
So let me ask you a question. So with these books, I know we had to kind of rely upon translations for them because they didn't come over here to the States or your side of the end either. They're on Britain's side. So the question I have is, with the lore, generally speaking, with Armored Core 1, the mail system is kind of what always delivered the context of the story of the games. You got a little more narrative-driven pieces throughout different portions. Armored Core 4, it kind of introduced cutscenes in between like different missions and kind of gave more information. So do you think the lore was always kind of intended to be almost like esoteric, like it was meant to kind of just be in the background and not the focus? Or do you think it's just they had a whole lot of ideas and weren't too sure how to put it into game form? Maybe the limited hardware capabilities they had at the time.
I think that was true. I mean, some of the time it is hardware capability. There's only so much you want to do, and to be fair, it's a game about mechs. Some people don't really want to face the story. As far as they're concerned, they build their mech, they destroy something, they move on to the next mission. And obviously, there's so much information they packed into these books. You think there's no way they'd put it in. There's no way you'd be able to fit all that in a game and still make it fun. It would be a textbook read. As much as I love it, I know a lot of people out there wouldn't want to sit through and read texts and texts and texts of stuff. I think the mail system and everything else was a good compromise to what they wanted in the end.
Yeah, I can see that too. And it already kind of gets a little bit of criticism for being like a math or a spreadsheet simulator, which, I like math. It's fine. But yeah, it's getting to the advanced options and seeing all the different additional stats and saying, well, what's that do? What's that do? So yeah, I would see if you had that much information going all at once, and then on top of that, having just a constant dump of text of lore. Yeah, I could see where, as partially hardware limitations and partially just how much you want people to sit there and read, because you're already reading your stats a lot as part of the mechanics of the game, let alone reading all that stuff. So yeah, that does make sense. So a couple of things I had. So I know some people here on the channel, there's a wide variety of people. We have some people who are the old school gamers who played Armored Core back in the day. You also have some people who are Armored Core 6 is going to be their first game ever. So I kind of thought I'd go back a little bit and do some references. So there's actually quite a few references throughout the Armored Core series. And so just out of curiosity, so I didn't tell you about this, and I didn't tell you about this on purpose up front. I'm going to quiz you, and I'm going to see how many references to other future or past From Software titles in Armored Core do you think you can name?
Go on then, let's see how much I failed this one.
No, it's fine. All right. So Armored Core 1. Actually, I think technically Project Phantasma, but Armored Core 1. There was a mission that was asked about specifically for stopping a gang. You remember what that gang was called?
This was the Dark Souls gang, wasn't it? And they all went around in tanks.
Correct. Yep. It was gang. It said the mission was called Stop Gang Dark Soul. So even there, they already had good references to their future titles and their mainline series that made them very popular in modern day era. So very good. That wasn't too bad. Can you name the weapon that was named in the Kingsfield series that has then appeared in almost every From Software game since?
This is the Moonlight Blade, I believe, and this was started in Kingsfield and moved all the way up, and we got it all the way through the series, and as I was told multiple times in my own video.
Yeah. Yep. So I would recommend looking at the Moonlight video. That might have been a softball one for you because you did do a Moonlight video. But yeah, even in Elden Ring has a Moonlight. So an interesting point with that too, some people don't know this, there was a pilot in Master Arena named Jin. And if you look at his emblem actually looks like the moonlight from Kingsfield. Like they look like two moonlights crossed. Is more or less the reference on that emblem. So,
even I didn't know that. I'm learning.
So yeah, so 2 for 2, not doing too bad so far. So the number one ranked, so we say, Arena Raven in Project Phantasma. Do you remember his name?
You're asking. This is how much I paid attention to the arena when I was racing through the game.
There's a major Kingsfield reference here.
I keep wanting to say it, but I know it's not. It's the one with the. I don't think it's the one with the dragon emblem, is it?
It is the one with the dragon emblem. You are correct.
Is it one with? I can't remember his name. His name is Drax something.
All right,
or something like that.
AC Black Dragon. AC Black Dragon, and his name's the pilot name starts with an N.
Oh, it's Necron or something?
Yes, perfect. Yes, Necron. So Necron and Black Dragon are references, obviously, to Kingsfield. Necron was the magician who summoned the Black Dragon to protect himself. So ironically, Black Dragon could only be killed by the moonlight. So yes, so that's where that reference comes in also. So yeah, you're not too you picked up on it eventually. That wasn't too bad. You give yourself a little more credit, okay? You're
Just
doing
give me
something.
half a point. Half a point for that one. There was a major help there.
So in project, there's another Project Phantasma. So let me ask you a true or false question. So I'll give you a 50-50 chance to help you get it right. Is there a level in Project Phantasma that is more or less a replica reference? The level itself is laid out the exact same way as a level in Kingsfield 2.
I want to say yes because I believe there is a castle level that's in there that could be related. So I'm going to go with yes.
You are correct. No castle, but I'll still give you the point for being true. You have the level underground maze is actually the layout's almost exactly the same as a level in Kingsfield 2. So
Yeah, learning every day.
I'm actually curious if they actually reused assets for that, because I thought that maybe they might have, because they aren't too far apart. They're both PlayStation games. So all right. So as someone mentioned in the chat, we actually have patches and no count. So patches and no count. Can you give us the Armored Core reference for those two?
So Patches was a cowardly pilot that turned up in the mission where we see the first two Orca ACs. However, if both of these ACs are defeated, you will find that he stands there and goes, "No, wait, we're friends. You don't want to kill me." And he'll sat there, and if the player sits there, he actually gets up and leave. To which there are countless things of Windy calling him a coward and all sorts of things. But I believe this is originally from the character, obviously as Patches, of this miscreant person. And from my best memory, from I haven't played a lot of the games, he is the one that kicks you down a hole and is generally not a very nice person.
Yep, you got it. And so Patches also showed up, in Dark Souls and other games here in the future. So yep, good reference there. All right, so that's kind of the Easter eggs I have. So let me ask you an interesting question. Have you played any of the Dark Souls games?
I have played Dark Souls. It's not Dark Souls, it's Demon Souls is what it starts with. And I got up to the point with a black sludge monster. I imagine it was the first boss, and it took me that long to beat it. I put the game down and said, "Phew, that was hard work. I'll come back to it later," and never came back to it.
Yeah, so that sounds like typical From style. Game too hard, come back to later. Armored Core not being much different, in all honesty, for many people, especially back then. So last little bit of information you have. So this could be a reference. I think it's pretty obviously is. So in the opening area of Dark Souls 1, you actually see the character get carried by a raven from the asylum. And throughout the game, you actually can see the raven sitting in a nest throughout different places. So I feel like that's an obvious carry the torch kind of reference to the raven and Raven's Nest as being the base, so to speak, for Armored Core.
Absolutely. The very first base for Armored Cores, Raven, sorry, it was what they were called. So it was the Raven's Nest, which, as we know, was operated by an unknown person who went by a name of R. And yet we never knew who R was until it was later found out he was the AI all along.
It was me, Dio. That's a terrible joke. Should have made that one. Okay. Anyways, so the Pug and the Master actually has a comment in here. It's something I didn't know. He says, not related to future games, but Berlioz, #1 from AC4, takes his name from a composer, and the mission you kill him in, a Masha Supplice, is taken from the composer's most famous work.
Very cool. I believe there was also a lot of French Revolution going on out there, like the date of Orca's starting, and Ostava is the name of the person who I believe is a big key figure at that point. Obviously, I'm not very good at real history, so you'll have to forgive me for that one, but I believe that's where the link is.
Well, you are called Armored Core lore, not French lore, so I won't blame you for not knowing as much. All right.
Oui, thank you.
Okay, so to kind of go into timelines here. So people wanted to know general lore. So I wanted to pick up what I thought were a couple common topics that maybe people don't know. So maybe you can kind of shed some light on it just a little bit. So we say continuity. Continuity is a big thing in a lot of games. We look for references and ideas from previous games to the next games to see if there's any kind of continuity or congruency between the series. Armored Core has plenty of continuity between various games, but there are some segments to it. So you think you can kind of break down for us the different, so we say timelines or what games are related to which?
Sure. So what we have is this information comes from the Armored Core 10 Complete Works, which is what we've used as the base for the timeline. So we go Armored Core 1, Project Phantasma, Master of Arena. However, at this time, all these events are taking place around the same time. We believe that the hero of Master Arena is Leos Klein, which links us into the next game of Armored Core 2. So Armored Core 2 and all the way to Armored Core Another Age is also linked. They're all set in the same world. So these they move on. So that's its first major timeline. So that's your timeline 1. Timeline 2, we go from Armored Core 3 all the way to Silent Line. So we start with a brand new thing. We start with another great disaster. In Armored Core 3, people living underground again. However, the AI now has a name called the Controller. The Controller is in charge of everything. You as the player set out, you see this world and all these corporations trying to figure out what they do. Some want to live under him and some want to take over. It all goes horribly wrong. Suddenly all the corporations go, actually, we probably want to look after him. But you as the Raven go, not a chance, I'm taking him out. And you take him out. So following that opens up the world. People pop out. The corporations spread out on the world and they go, we're going to expand our power now. There's no one to stop us. So that's Silent Line. Silent Line is the extension of expanding into the world. There's an area where no one's ever been before. The corporations try to get in. They're pushed back by this unknown force. They go, bummer, this is a real bummer. We really want to get in there. And so they start sending ravens and everything. And the whole game basically turns out that you go there and it's another AI that's looking after another place on there. And so that's Silent Line. We then move on Nexus, which takes place 50 years later. So 50 years later, Nexus happens. We get new corporations. Things have changed. There are little hints. The time has moved on. So we get there. As we see, there's a new corporation called Navis who has found this great, mysterious new power. Everyone wants this new power. Mirage at the time, who is very powerful, says, we should have that and you should share it with us all. Navis says, no, thank you, it's mine. This starts a war between them two. Crest, on the other hand, is sitting back. It waits, and as the player, you move on. It goes on. The other one, Navis gets completely wrecked by Mirage. Mirage goes, great, we're going to go in. They go into this cave where this thing is, and they get completely wrecked. So they're forced to retreat. It then turns out that Kisaragi, one of these things who's been sitting in the back, says, by the way, we sent a research team into there, and they might have activated an ultimate weapon that may kill the Earth. Can you just go and destroy it for us?
Yeah, I remember that conversation.
I'm very much skimming over the detail because there's so much behind the scenes going on with crests and behaving, and there's human plus elements coming in where we've got Genobi who goes against Crest because he believes that he can win this war, and Crest is like, no, it's costing us too much money. I'm not staying in this war. So I'm skimming over a lot of details. You'll have to forgive me. As I said, we move on from Nexus, and then we move that on to Last Raven. We have to skip Nine Ball and Formula Front, sadly, because they're in a whole completely different ball game of their own. They go in there. We get
before you move on to the Last Raven, if you don't mind. So Ninebreaker, Formula Front, you just mentioned them. Ninebreaker, is there much detail covered at all in maybe the books they release as far as if that people pretty much just assume it's out of timeline, it's its own separate thing? Is that kind of what the books more or less point to? Is there any other insider information, shall we say, about Ninebreaker?
The problem with Ninebreaker is it's very much a mixture. We've got a mixture of everything from a Nexus era and AC3 here. It's a very much mixed thing. There is the belief that there was an AI and that was what was training people, or it was Jacko behind the scenes, was training people, training Ravens to come face what this unknown machine were, which we'll talk about in Last Raven. But it's very much there's bits there, and the books don't really talk about it. There's one book I've got, the official guide, and that really doesn't touch much. What it ends up being is more a walkthrough of how to defeat everything. So it's a little bit on the iffy side, which is why it tends to fall out of the whole timeline, because we've got so much in there and not a lot of it makes sense.
That makes sense. All right, so go ahead and finish up. You're going to do a brief glance over of Last Raven, which sounds bonkers because there's so much story in Last Raven, so do your best.
Okay. Here's my minute, Last Raven. Last Raven is the world has been destroyed by the ultimate weapon. The three corporations that work there, Kisaragi, Crest, and Mirage, go, we can't stand on our own, we're going to join each other. So they all join up and they become the Alliance. The Alliance rules the world. They think, bang, done, we're in charge. Suddenly, another group raised up called Vertex, who's led by Jacko. And Jacko says, no thank you, we don't want you in charge, we've got our own plans. Little do they know he has his own plans of his own. So he starts this whole thing and they all start fighting each other, which revolves into all sorts of chaos. We get ravens killing other ravens for more money. We get one raven who's a female called Zenaida who scares everyone, who basically is the most powerful raven, but she goes around and she mocks everyone. It ends up being an all-killing spree. As we say, there's 6 routes in this game. Each one tells a different ending. Which one is the real one? It's up to you. However, there are only 2 endings that officially end as Last Ravens. So there's only, as I said, there's only 2 endings. The most one we think is the most one is the Zenaida route, which ends up with you and Zenaida down in the bottom of the pulverizer, which ends up to be the ultimate weapon, which is the ultimate weapon which is being produced by. I'm going to have to remember the name of this one because I'm going a bit too fast. It's called... I want to call it the Incinerator. It's not the Incinerator. It's called... I'm sure someone will correct me in the comments. But yes, this ultimate machine has been pumping out these pulverizers. Basically, the pulverizer goes out, destroys an AC. It goes, fine, I must be very good at it. And if an AC destroys the pulverizer, it sends that information back to it. The machine then produces another pulverizer and sends that one out. So this goes on, and in the end, the pulverizer is destroyed, the machine is shut down, and it's just you, the player, and Zenaida. And Zenaida goes, I want to be the best, so I'm going to kill you here. So basically, this turns out into a whole fight, and in the end, the player kills Zenaida, and he officially become the Last Raven. And that's the end of that timeline.
I've always just referred to them as the airborne pulverizer, the quad pulverizer, so they have individual names. That's actually news to me.
Oh, they're just called. They are just called. They go on their leg type, so it's the pulverizer tank legs and all that legs. They don't go a name. It's just. But even then, there's consistencies there because if you can pick them out, the pulverizer. Oh, are you talking about the
enter scene? Is that what you're referring to? The enter scene?
That's the one. That's it. See, name escapes me, but yes, that's the one. But as I said, there's consistencies with that one as well because we get a point where the machine is destroyed, but then it produces another one. There's also the secret ending where magic blue one pops out, even though it's already been destroyed. So that's considered not canon. We'll be honest. That's very much put aside as no, that didn't happen. But of course, there are other times where the machine pumps out more. It pumps out 2 at a time when there's one down there and there's already one up there that's you're destroyed in one of the missions, even though it's only meant to be able to pump out 1 at a time. It's Last Raven. It's
very Last Raven.
It's very Last Raven. It basically it broke me as a lore person. It was like, oh my god, there is so much to go here.
So looking at the comments here a little bit, a couple people, I think Mr. O over here mentioned 621. Yes, I saw that meme. I appreciated the meme a lot. How 621 you add them together equals 9. Does that mean 9 ball confirmed? Like, yeah. I would like nothing more. Honestly, okay, so let me explain something to you. As someone who's actually had hands-on time playing the game and doing the boss fights and playing against the boss fights, I actually kind of shudder at the idea of what 9 ball would look like in Armored Core 6 because the boss fights are nuts. So I mean, in previous games, it was always here, like, I just do a playthrough, a boss rush of Another Age, where literally get dropped down in a big arena, fight Stinger, fight Phantasma, fight 9-Ball Seraph. Pretty straightforward arena fights. These are often very thematic. They're in big open areas. There's basically destruction going on around you. The boss fights, you have to kind of learn their mechanics specifically, because if you don't, you're going to pay for it later, because there's just some things that borderline instant kill you. With the way that the damage ratio works, the movement speed works, and what the bosses I have faced so far are like, I shudder at what 9-ball in this game would be like.
Go on.
No, I was like, when I made reference in my review video, I said in the preview video, I said, look, this game could be more punishing Last Raven, and after having talked about Last Raven for the last few minutes, made me think about that specifically. Yeah, like that's saying something. Now, I'm not saying it's harder. I said punishing, and punishing is a very specific word, and it's a word used for purpose. As you probably know, Lore, ACL, whatever, Mr. Lore. I know you don't like that. you have the last Raven punished you if you made mistakes.
Yes, it did.
So the 6 kind of takes that idea and cranks it up to 11. So if you goof up, it's gonna hurt.
But that was the thing with Last Raven was also the player was very much at a disadvantage. Most of the Ravens you fought already had Human Plus or OB or the third generation of Human Plus within them. So the player wasn't allowed that. However, most of the ACs you fought were installed with it.
Yep. So we've had Human Plus come up a couple times here now. I'll ask the question. So someone brought up the question in the comments and said this. It's like, how does Human Plus work exactly?
Okay, so you break it down in the first generation. Human Plus was a surgery that was first given to Murakuma by the AI. So Murakuma took this, they developed it, and then they started selling it to the general public. By saying general public, I mean anyone who could afford it. So corporations obviously went away with this and they thought, what could we do with this? And it turns out a lot of them used Human Plus within their security forces. So a lot of their bodyguards were Human Pluses. It's not like Raven's Human Pluses, but they were given certain aspects. So some of them were made stronger, some of their nerves were. It made them more machine that way. So it was in that sense, security guards were off it. As for Ravens, it was almost a different story. For most Ravens, the only way they were Human Plus is if they fell into debt and then a Murakuma person would find you and say, we can make your debt disappear. Come with us and become an experiment. At which point, being low and no money, people would go along with this. And they'd sign, imagine a waiver that said, yep, I give up all this. And there is a chance most people did not survive this surgery. If they did survive it, there is a chance they could obviously go better. They could become stronger. On the other hand, there is a chance it really messed with the person's brain, such as Wildcat, we've seen, and the escapee. It was a very hard thing to do for a person. I say that it was hard for them. However, some Ravens did it, paid for it, and went, yep, I want to be stronger. And that's why they did it. They paid for the enhancements to become better. That was Generations 1's idea of how Human Plus happened.
All right. Yep, that pretty much lines up what I understand it too. So I actually had an interesting question. I kind of get your thoughts on it. I have my own ideas, but I'm kind of going to get what your thought about it. So I think it's interesting that the terminology in the first place is even called Human Plus. Mm-hmm. I find that very interesting in the sense that, so when you get to different upgrades, like you have more energy capacity with your AC, you can now start firing back cannons on your AC when normally you couldn't before while flying around. So the question I have is, like, why do you think it's referenced as Human Plus, given the fact that it appears to just give your ACs more powerful capabilities?
It's very much, I believe, like the next advancement of humans. This is what it was, the advance of what they become. So it was something they could go beyond their capabilities. So as you say, pilots who couldn't kneel at first, so could suddenly kneel. So the idea, as they said, and obviously this radar, the radar is a real good point here, because the radar on a normal AC, you can't see missiles or anything else. However, with the human Hans implusment, what is inferred is they actually removed the eye or removed certain nerves of the eye and replaced it with electronics. So you essentially, the person became more of a machine and they could interact with their armored core more. So they could see these things, they could do things normal humans could not do because the person themselves had become more machine.
Do you think that their ability to better sync up or better use their ACs essentially enabled them to have more abilities out of their ACs, so to speak?
Yeah, and as I said, we get a very brief thing into the whole security guard thing. It's not spoken about much, but we imagine that was sort of the same intellect. So I imagine maybe they were made stronger by it. Maybe they were given better vision. It doesn't talk a lot about it in the books, but we can say that it wasn't just given to Ravens, and corporations did incorporate into their own security forces.
Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of where I always was. I kind of felt like almost kind of go to the Zenaida or Genobi route, with Nexus or Last Raven, where they kind of became more and more machine, kind of almost like a la Phantasma, with Stinger, becoming more and more machine, essentially enabled them to be more powerful. That's kind of always been my bent on how Human Plus more or less works. So what an interesting point though. So is OP Intensify a less intrusive way to kind of get those same upgrades like an AC3 and Silent Line?
way it's portrayed is it's something that's slapped into an armored core. So there is no surgery or anything. All we know is we get an email. I'm sure you've heard this email. It says, if you use this, you are seen as being a cheater. Now, if you were surgically enhanced, most people wouldn't know unless you've obviously got a robot eye stuck on your head. But we haven't seen a lot of Armored Core pilots. So with that information we guess, what it means is, what I believe we can see is that people can know it's been enhanced, it's been done. So as I say, it's augments. So is it augmented into the human, or is this an Armored Core feature? Because all we get from the email is that you will be seen as you're dishonorable. So is it something physically seen, or can people see it on the Armored Core and go, you're enhanced, you're not doing it naturally?
Yeah. All right. So someone asked a question too to see what you think, because you went to the books, obviously. Are the books well written? And this is more of an opinion thing. What do you think of the books?
Books very much dive into more lore than the games do. You also get a lot of personal comments from the creators themselves. Like in the Armored Core 4 book, you can read one where he says, this part needs moving. There is no way realistically this thing would fly. We have to make it look like it does. These are just side comments you can read in some of the drawings. So, but the books give you more information than the game could ever possibly want to.
Cool. All right. We'll go to the next thing here I kind of had. So we had the Human Plus discussion. So to kind of tie that into a future thing. So Armored Core 6, you probably saw the trailers, other things like that in gameplay. They call them augmented human. And you hear that phrase a few times throughout it. Do you feel that's a clear reference to Human Plus, or do you think that's just what they're calling it now, so to speak? Even mentioned like maybe Gen 4s or Gen 1s or whatever it was in one of the trailers. So what do you kind of feel like is going on?
Yeah, it's Augmented Human, I feel, is the new name for Human Plus. As you said, in Armored Core 4 and 4 Answer, we had links and they were connected to the AMS system, the Algatory. I'm not going to remember the name off the top of my head, but they needed that within the Next to be able to operate it properly. They also had to have the certain psychological readings, or I guess you could say powers, do that. So I feel this is what augmented humans are. However, as we've seen in the trailer, a lot of these pilots seem to be wrapped in tinfoil and ready for the oven. So it's one of those things you either got to think this must be a psychological thing, unless we're putting these into an armored core like an oven.
Cool. All right. I think I'll go on to the next little bit here we have. So someone asked, is there any references or artwork or cutscenes where they show pilots getting in or out of the AC cockpits?
Okay, so we know there is one scene, I believe, in our Armored Core Last Raven. We see, obviously, Zenaida getting out of that pit, her cockpit there. We also get in the book, I believe, the Armored Core 5 book, we get to see the actual inside of a cockpit, and we see where that one comes from and everything else. 4's a little bit more wonky, I'll be honest. We can guess it's either the back of the head or somewhere in the core. It's not really shown from what I can remember of playing through the game. It's the same with all of them. It's one of those conversations. Some people say, "Yep, we got it." In that one, it's clear, but in the book, I can definitely say in the Armored Core 5 book, it shows how the pilot sits, how they do it, and I'd suggest that one's probably a good basis to go off for most of them.
All right, cool. So one of that question here too. Interesting about the sizes of ACs. Can you tell the difference between like the Armor Cores, like the size differences between the different generations would have been?
That's very difficult. To this day, the only size chart I have seen, which is say is good, is the Armored Core 4, the Armored Core 4 Answer and 4 Art book, which has a picture of Motherwell, a plane, something else, and the Next. So that's my general theory of what I know at the minute. So that's what I would go off for the size of a Next. Others, it's a little bit debatable. Obviously, there was times, there's pixels, we've had all sorts of measurements. I can't put my hand on my heart and say there's definitely an answer, because we're still learning it. We're still going through it.
All right, so let me ask you, so personal, let's take a guess here.
Okay.
We haven't seen too many size references either in the games. That's actually going to check out later. AC6, taller or shorter than fourth gen?
I believe they are going to be a lot smaller.
Okay. See if I end up being right. I think they actually might be bigger potentially. I think there's a chance, given how it all works, that I think there might be some references due to the fact that they're on another planet and they have some architecture. Now, granted, it could just be a scaling issue. Who knows? But
Well,
maybe they
yeah.
could be a lot smaller. No idea. Yeah, this is people always want to know, like, how big is this thing? And like Project Phantasma, for example, you have the people running around in the buildings in that
Oh
one
yeah, but
mission.
yeah.
So
This is the same with cars and trucks and everything else. And if you look in one scene, the armor core is just above it, and then in the other scene, it's about the same size as it. So it really is one of those questions. You go, it's a touchy ground. I'll be honest, it's touchy ground.
yeah, correct. Okay, so I had one other thing I wanted to cover specifically, and then we'll kind of move on to any other questions people may have. We're coming up here about 45 minutes. I have about 15 or so minutes left. So the main character of the game, we know we're going by reference with 621.
Hmm?
And we also know there's factions involved, much like previous Armored Core games. And so Rubicon 3 obviously had some kind of disaster, something blew up, they had some problems. So fighting over coral, as an example, with the corporation factions fighting over control of that coral, do you think essentially the game is trying to tell us that we're just essentially repeating the same old cycle over and over again, much like the first Great Destruction, which was caused by warring corporations? We got back to the surface, the corporations warred again, causing another problem, and then rinse, repeat over and over and over again. Is this just more From Software's basically commentary on corporate greed, or is this just the consistent throughput of Armored Core?
I think, as you said, it's very much the same old story. But to me personally, this is more much like the fourth gen with the Kojima particles. They were discovered. They were this great thing. It made huge advancements. So what did we do with it? We made giant fighting robots of it. We made giant fighting mechs of it. Corporations took over. They used it for the worst possible thing. We had ultimate energy. We could have all lived peaceful lives. But because we were running out of food at the time and the world was crumbling, the world governments were crumbling, 6 corporations said, you know what, we've got this ultimate power, let's take over, and we made the world worse because we poisoned it. And I believe maybe this is what we're going to see again. We've got, as I said, we've got these rebellious factions who said this is our planet. So it makes me think there was obviously inhabitants there before. So maybe they know how to use this resource carefully to make sure it's not poisonous to people, unlike the corporations who are going to come in and go, yeah, we need all that, we're going to make the best war machines, we're going to pollute everything, and whoops, we've killed another planet.
Yeah, I like the way you put that. It's like, yeah, let's take the greatest known resource to all of existence, and let's make giant robots that kill each other. Yep, that's, in all honesty, I feel like that's almost how it'd go in real life. That's probably not too far from the truth, in all honesty. Okay. All right. So I have a question for you.
Go for it.
And depending on your answer, then this might end up or turn out to be homework for you. If you have a good answer, great. But I was looking at this and I was trying to find a good idea. So the part names, right? So obviously we have the infamous ones. You have the Kurosawa, the Moonlight. Later on, the Kurosawa got known as the KRSW. But always has like this, like the original, all the weapons in the first Armored Core were all WG dash something, and you have all these different options. So is there a method to the madness that is the naming schemes for all these random letters and numbers, seemingly random letters and numbers, or is that just something they decided, those numbers sound good together, let's pick that?
I will not take credit for this one because actually it was one of my commenters that worked it out. It's the letters actually stand for where for certain, I should say certain games, where the weapon came from, so who produced it, what type of weapon it is. So some of them you can work out as Zeo Matrix weapon arm, da 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 da, Emerald weapon arm, da da da, Emerald middle weight leg. That's where we believe it's coming from. But again, it wasn't me because personally I haven't found anything. But that to me radiated as something that, you know what, this can actually be as close as we're probably going to get to what these are named after. If they're not named after specific objects in the world or references, maybe this is what they come. It's their part, it's where they're from and what they are.
Cool. Yeah, that's kind of what I found too. That's why I was curious. All right. So, Mr. O down there, question for our sixth grade question. So, it's kind of obvious, although I'll be honest with you, I'll be very tempted to just go into sheer amounts of debt to see if it's even possible to get negative amounts. All the missions, even the ones where I did lots of repair kits and had a refresh and used lots of solid ammo, I never got enough deductions on my ammo cost or repair costs to ever go into negative at any point in any of the missions. So to kind of give like, what's the punishment or what's you think the loss, so to speak, of going into these missions? To answer your question, you can't play around with cool stuff sooner. Parts in the shop are very expensive. Very expensive. To give you reference, I think the first mission when I played it, I think the payout was right around 110,000 credits. There was not a single core, like I'm talking like the core is at the head core, leg, arms. The actual core themselves, there was not a single new core in the shop that I could buy with that amount of money. So if you want to be able to buy new parts and try them out sooner and get to use them and upgrade your AC and do more things with it, the better you perform in the missions, the sooner you're going to be able to go through and get those parts and try them out. Now, granted, you can sell them and go back and do the old fashioned, go to the shop, sell them, go back, buy new parts. Oh, don't like that one. Sell these parts, go buy new ones. That still exists here in Armored Core 6. And honestly, there is some performance-based things as far as your ranking goes in the mission, finding the combat logs that you get used to unlock other parts that the internal people give you there in the missions. I don't want to spoil too much. So there's basically the game incentivizes you to play well versus punishing you for not playing as well. So that you don't get to experience the cool stuff as soon, but if you play really well, you get to experience all new and fun and cool stuff much early on. So I think it's an interesting take or bent on the same old Armored Core system that isn't just as all negative. It's just more positive focus, but in all reality, it still incentivizes you to play really well and try to do your best, try to get the new cool stuff and try it out. All right. Yeah, it's about 10 minutes left here. We're kind of getting into the what's called the witching hour of my timeline here. So ask the question, mail system like older games. Not that I have seen so far. It's very much in the same vein as 4 and 5, where it has like the pre and after cutscenes, not cutscenes, but some are cutscenes. Well, some are just like mission briefings and debriefings, and it fulfills the need. It's almost like someone's reading mail for you, because it just say message received and it reads the message for you, so you're not reading it instead. So it's almost like it's back, just not quite the same. So let me ask you, ACL, did you have any Armored Core 6 related questions that I'm allowed to divulge?
I was very kindly shared with you, so I have a little idea. But while you're talking about parts and everything, just how varied parts are we going here? Are we all going to be able to have our dream tank and legs as always? Or is there some limit, would you say, to what we can build at first?
All right, so there is... Okay, so the reason why I mentioned before, if you watch my top 5 video, I really liked the fact that Nexus made leg parts have a reason to exist again. With the removal of plus and different advantages with like moving or flying while shooting back cannons, things of that nature. That very much stands out in this game. Standing still is painful. You do not want to stand still in this game. The less you can stand still, especially in boss fights, the better. I remember the first time I went to a mission with you might have seen some of the gameplays. There's an MT that has this big, huge cannon on its back, almost a la Gundam style, like the big, huge cannon on the back of it. And yeah, if you get hit with that thing, you lose 1 KP like that. It's gone.
Wow.
And that's an MT. Now, granted,
It's nasty.
you have the warning shots and like the visual. People are jokingly calling it the Pizza Hut indicator. Saying a shot's coming from there. I mean, you have chances to dodge it, but if you fire a big cannon, what the game developers call the ready stance or the shooting stance, it kind of hard locks you into that movement. If you're in that mode and that shot comes off, you're stuck. Like you're about to lose a big chunk of your armor points. So the advantage with quads, for example, if you jump up in the air and go in that float mode, you actually float pretty fast without having to quick boost, and you can fire your back cannons or heavy weapons without having to do it. And then you also have tank legs. You can just do whatever you want. Like you can fire. You can. The only thing you can't do is overboost during it, or as they call it in the new game, assault boost. You can. The variety of leg types are actually set. Now, what's interesting, and now we haven't really seen all the parts. We only got one tank leg and one quad leg so far. They said, they confirmed in an interview with Japan, I believe, that there's going to be light, medium, and heavyweight versions of each leg type. So there's going to be light, medium, heavy biped, light, medium, heavy reverse joint, light, medium, heavy quad legs. And they even asked about tanks. Yes, there's even going to be light, medium, and heavy tank.
Wow.
So there could be a lighter tank that's faster. That's really cool. I'll be interested to see what that playstyle looks like, having the advantage that they can have the back cannons while firing, but not as much of a load capacity. The weapons are well variety. Like the different rifles, they don't feel the same. The blades have different blade strikes and lengths and animations. They're not the same. Every weapon feels very unique and are very fun to play with. So I think the variety in this game is ridiculously huge compared to previous games, in all honesty. I felt like a lot of weapons felt very viable and nothing felt like it was too bad of a trade-off. Obviously, the starter AC is the starter AC. You obviously want to upgrade different rifles, but the different options you have, a lot of things you can tell are really good in missions that aren't going to be as good against PvP. And there's going to be some things that are great for PvP that aren't going to be as good in missions. So there's going to be a lot of things you can get customized in this game.
Well, I'm going to spend all my life in the garage then, aren't I?
Oh, you definitely are. And that doesn't even go into OS tuning, which is you spend all your OS chips you get from the arena, and that changes a ton of stuff there too. So as far as the punching robot, no, I wish I would have. I wish I would have punched when I went unarmed. I didn't try it. That's one of the first things I'm going to do when the game comes out. I want to know what the punching feels like. I did kick some people with the kicking OS tuning part, which is I found funny. I just kicking MTs across the game. But yeah, it's the cores and arms are going to have reflections as far as your energy capacity and your weight and your tolerance. There's going to be some variety because it actually affects, if you look at the advanced stats, the arms are very much like the old games where certain arms were better at firing precision, certain arms were better at blades. Some were better at attuning. Like there's certain cores. Some cores are better at adjusting for stability faster. Some keep you from getting stunned at all. Other ones help you recover from stun faster. There's going to be a lot of play options as far as what you want to do and how you want to, if you want to try to avoid stun at all, or just say, hey, I'm going to get stunned. I'm going to just build on getting out of it faster. So yeah, there's tons of variety here.
Ooh.
All right, a couple more minutes here. Last questions. All right, so before I answer one or two last Armor Core 6 questions, anyone have any lore specific questions? That's why we have the man here. Like that's why I brought him on for lore. He's there. I did not see a hard mode. That does not mean it doesn't exist, though. It might be something you have to unlock here to beat the game, but I did not see a hard mode. Do I think OS tuning is going to be pivotal in creating unique builds? So there's two things with OS tuning. So I don't know if you noticed this or not, ACL. So there's the expansion parts that say you can install the expansion part and you have to press a button to activate it. Like that's like assault armor, you have the plasma armor, the shields, you have, those are things that have certain things you can do based on button inputs. But there is actually quite a bit of the OS tuning that just stacks. So for example, the different weapons, you notice there was like increased kinetic weapon damage, increased explosive weapon damage, increased damage when a target is stunned. Those all stack. So you can actually... Cool. You can amp up what you have as far as that goes. And if anything holds true, every single arena opponent you beat gave you more chips in order to unlock more OS tuning parts. So I would imagine there's a wide variety of OS tuning you can do, and it will affect your gameplay. Because I can tell you, when you go against something with like plasma armor, for example, it removes their stun completely and removes any of the attitude tilting you've built up and lets them move freely. Like there's when you do assault armor, for example, then it goes fashion, big huge explosion, right? The Kojima explosion, except it's not Kojima anymore. If there's any missiles or any big shots out in the air when it launches off, it actually destroys the projectiles. So not only does it do damage, it actually protects your AC from taking any big shots at that time. So that's there's major gameplay implications with the OS tuning part. I think there's a ton. All right, last couple here. Corporations get much power of the universe. Honestly, I think it's the classic Armored Core storyline here. Not much has changed. Actually, a lore question. We'll finish up with this in a minute, okay? So my design aesthetic has always been heavy. There's portions of the game we didn't get to show off where I was so sick of dealing with the boss that I just, let's see how heavy I can go. And I literally just strapped on 1,000,000 grenade launchers, like both grenade launchers on both backs, grenade launcher on my right arm, and the parry blade on my left hand. And I literally just went grenade, stab. And I'm so sick of this boss. And funnily enough, it actually worked.
So you went riding on him.
Yeah, basically, yes. I'm so sick of this guy. I'm sick of this happening. I am just blasting this guy off the face of the planet. And that's essentially what happened. So I took some shots in the meantime because, I was a lot slower given the build. But even with that, it still worked. So we'll finish up with this last question here. Is 5th gen connected to 4th gen story-wise?
The question that haunts me every day. We have a bucket load of things that say we are. So we've got, obviously, the final boss of Armored Core Verdict Day, which is Engwix. I should get his name right. He's basically a black glint, for we purposely know him as. He obviously has assault armor. Obviously, it doesn't function well. He's got a Vanguard overboost, which allows him to transform into a plane, so it's a bit different. It generally shares that feeling. We've also got the cradles. We've got one crash cradle around. We've got the towers that share this thing of being from the past. We've got to remember Verdict Day was 100 years 100 years after 5, but 5 courts about a corporation who seems to know a lot of advanced technologies, and they have all these try that one. All of these advanced technologies that can function on their own. It's that fine line we tread between the things. It's mostly because the towers release energy after. So in the after stories, it's read in the stories that after the machine is destroyed, the towers release a power, and that makes that area completely, you can't go into it. It's completely poisoned. Anyone that goes into it will die. So it takes 100 years for this pollution to die down, which evolves into this whole story, which evolves into them getting into the towers, finding technology, being able to now reproduce armored cores. So it's that difficult question of, yes, it's heavily said, but on the other hand, there's not like timelines in the other book, which may change with this new book coming out, which is looking at the chronological order of it. It could shed some light on it, but currently there are those that believe and there are those that not.
Awesome. All right, couple last questions here. So slashes, is the setting going more or less grimdark? Honestly, I think it's about the same. There is a lot of vibrant color in here thanks to the coral and other things in the map, so I think it's really cool. It's very much post-apocalyptic, as Armored Core always has kind of been. So yeah, it kind of it keeps the same journalist vibe. Cassis, I realized I misread your question. So why do you think corporations are able to get so much power as they do in the universe? I would say honestly, pay attention to our real world. Do you think, not to go full tinfoil hat here, but just kind of paying attention to observations? It's like, do you really think the governments run things half the time, or are big money corporations running things half the time? That's why it's called special interest for a reason. My best friend and I have always jokingly said we're members of the follow the money party, because you follow the money. That's usually what happens. I think Armored Core, I think From Software actually made the corporate greed and the corporate control story angle so prominent, because I think that was very evident in society even back then, and honestly, that hasn't changed much today. It's pretty, and I don't think it's I think it's a pretty plausible future if we ever were to get to the point where we're making giant robots, that it wouldn't necessarily end up the way we see it in Armored Core. I wouldn't be surprised that it's almost exactly how it ends out. So we have one last lore-specific question. And we will finish with this one. I gotta go. What do you think of the theory that Armored Core 4 is a prequel to AC1?
So this was the theory brought out by Buster, TBM, and a few others. It's a very good theory. However, as we said, the books unfortunately put this very much down. However, as I've always said, it's a theory. We should go along with it. Enjoy it. If it makes the story more enjoyable, go for it. We have the books that say otherwise, but if it makes it more enjoyable for you, you should go with it. I can spout the facts of the book at you all day, but that doesn't make the game more interesting. So we can see the links. I understand where it comes from. It all leads very nicely into each other. So we go from four answer, AC5, Verdict Day, and then we go to the split for Armored Core 1, Phantasma, and then we get the split where they go into space and other things, and they go underground again. It's a very nice theory. As I said, the books very much put a stamp on that and say, this is what we've put officially. But as I will say again, if it makes it more enjoyable for you, go for it.
All right. I actually just realized my streams are going for an hour, but actually my time clocks, I actually have time. I had a question I wanted to ask you. So, you know, from the Complete Works, we have like what's called Earth Days, right?
Yes.
So we just talked earlier about timelines as far as like you had Armored Core versus Another Age, then you had the AC3 versus Last Raven kind of timeline. So according to the Complete Works, these Earth Days, so to speak, or ED, overlap.
Yes.
So with that being the case, the fact they do overlap, is there any references? Obviously, the Armored Core 3 games came out later, so we can't. Obviously, Armored Core 2 can't reference Armored Core 3. Was there any references in the what we call the Gen 3 era that referenced the timelines of what was happening elsewhere in the timeline? We'll call Timeline 1.
Not really. The whole Earth Day thing came about because I don't really want to reference the Armored Core 3. When the controller took over, it worked out that humans couldn't function without a system. There was another system in place before this. However, it couldn't seem to work it. Humans weren't adapting. They couldn't seem to find a day. So it became Earth Day for the calendars. And I think it speaks about this in the book, how it was changed over time. It was adapted to make sure that the underground people could live a normal life. So, yeah, as I said, Armored Core 1's very much, it escapes around the edges. Armored Core 3 is very much, as I said, it's a brand new timeline. It almost reinvents that story and gives it purpose. So, yeah, Earth Day is pretty much, Earth Time, as I say, was pretty much invented to make sure that people underground could have a regular time, because before the AI used a different thing which was too complicated for the general public to understand.
See, things I didn't know again. So this is why I brought you on, so even I could ask things I was curious about. Alrighty. Well, I want to thank you, Mr. Lore, ACL, Armored Core Lore, for joining me today. This was a ton of fun. If we do something in the future here, I'm looking forward to collab with you again. It was a pleasure to meet you. I appreciate your content. Seriously, people, I'll have it in the description if I haven't already. Go watch this man's videos. I mean, the level of deep dive, even on the corporations, individual things, like the story elements of the different games. If you're new to the series, honestly, they're long, but they're not long compared to playing the games themselves. But they're very detail oriented. You'll be very, not saying it's necessary to understand Armored Core 6, but in all reality, getting the thematic nature of Armored Core is fairly consistent through the different games. You'll see why when I did my preview where I said that this is an Armored Core game. It feels very Armored Core, and it's very Armored Core on purpose. So yeah, definitely go check out his channel. Go take a look at it. It's at Armored Core Lore. It's amazing stuff, and I appreciate all the work you do.
Thank you for having me. And as I said, back to you. Thank you for all you do for the community. I think it's important we all chip in, and it's really shown. We've really grown over the last few months. So I appreciate it. So thank you for everyone that's created content for Armored Core. It's made me very happy as an Armored Core fanboy. I won't lie. I love going on YouTube now, and my recommended is just filled of Armored Core stuff. I'm like, yes, this is what I wanted.
So just to kind of reference, I started my Armored Core 3 playthrough. That video got released yesterday. The one before that was actually a boss rush of the secret bosses Another Age. I actually showed off a really funny cheese strat on Phantasma. I don't know if you saw that yet or not, ACL, but that's something I showed my best friend when we were younger, and his mind was blown. You could cheese Phantasma that way. So if you haven't seen it, I recommend watching it. It's hilarious that the AI is that easily broken. So thank you again, ACL. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for interacting with us. Thank you for taking your time with us. And I will see you whenever the next live stream is. I have no idea. I might do something around the release time, might do something else. I have some other content ideas on the pipeline. If they work out, they work out. If not, you'll know. And I will see you all the next time this happens. See ya.
Bye.